Hello and welcome to the Aquarius Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Reed. This episode of the Aquarius Podcast is sponsored by OASE. Now, if you haven't already checked them out, head on over to the OASE website using the links in the show notes and check out their full line of filtration products. Learn more about the Filto Smart and Biomaster external filters and the BioPlus internal filters. Also, follow their social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram to see more of these great filters in action. Now, before we jump into this week's episode, I'm going to take a few moments of shameless self-promotion and let you all know that the first ever Aquarius Podcast YouTube video is online. Yes, an actual video with my smiling face in it. Now, I know I've said that I wasn't going to do any videos, but I keep hearing from listeners that you guys want to know more about what's happening in my fish rooms. You're kind of bummed out that I don't do those, state of the fish rooms or just talking about the few tanks that I had set up, back in episode 1 through 10 when I was doing that in the intro section. So I think publishing a few videos a month is a great way for me to keep you all up to date on what's happening in the Aquarius Podcast fish room and other adventures that I'm on. So there's going to be an upcoming fish collecting trip in Peru that you might have heard me talking to George Farmer about. That's going to happen in August. I will be filming that, and who knows how many videos will come out of that, but I mean, who in this hobby doesn't want to see some cool stuff from Peru? At least I hope I can bring some cool stuff from Peru. So if you want to see that video content, head on over to the Aquarius Podcast YouTube channel and subscribe if you aren't already. And now that I feel thoroughly dirty from the self-promotion, let's get on with the interview. Today's date is Tuesday, July 9th, 2019. My guest today is Franck. Zack is the Aquatics Category Manager for World Pet Association and a driving force behind the aquatic experience. He's also an alumni of the Aquarius Podcast as the episode 16 guest. So Zack, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Randy.
That was on the fly too. It actually says, so Zack, welcome to the podcast, and I add that little ad lib in there. Did you like it?
Oh, it was perfect.
Welcome back to the podcast. So yeah, man, thank you very much for coming back on. And you and I back in episode 16. I think this episode is going to be 64. So it's been
Oh, you've come so far.
It's I don't know if I wouldn't call it that. I've just kind of kicked the can down the road. Is I think what I keep doing, and having good guests helps me to do that. So. And I would say you were one of them, man. We had a great conversation, and ever since then, I've been looking forward to having you back on. You are doing some really cool stuff as far as what you do for work and just the amount of travel that you get to do around the world. So I think having you come back on to talk about some of those experiences and also talk about the 2019 aquatic experience, I think that's just going to be a great episode.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I'm excited to talk about myself because everybody loves that, and then also to promote aquatic experience a little bit.
All right, man. So you've been doing a lot of travel. So where have you been, and what have been some really cool things that you've seen in the aquatic space?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of last time we spoke. I think I went to China, and I went to the Pet Fair Asia and the Aquarama in Shanghai last August, September, which was a pretty cool experience because they do some great fish competitions there. That was exciting. So they do their betta competitions, and they do guppy competitions, discus competitions, and of course the Asian arowana competitions. So Asian arowanas are fish that we don't see in the U.S. very often, but just a huge popular fish all throughout Asia. So that was really exciting for me.
Yeah, and there's some YouTube videos. I think like Business Insider, they actually have a like why it's so expensive or something of that nature, where they talk about like why is lobster so expensive, why is this so expensive, so on and so forth. And I believe one of them is on the Asian arowana. I could be completely wrong, but nonetheless, there's like a non-fish related channel that talks about the designer arowanas and like the actual procedures, like the cosmetic procedures that these very well-off people pay to actually have their fish undergo. And it is a very passionate thing over there.
Yeah, no, it is very passionate. There's actually a book that was written by a woman named Emily Voigt, and it's called The Dragon Behind the Glass. I'll give her a quick shout out because it's a really interesting story about how a journalist got interested in Asian arowanas, and then she kind of traveled around the world, even with Heiko Blair, and that really talks about how these fish are no longer found in the wild very much, and just really why they're so expensive and why they're so sought after in the different cultures throughout the Asian communities. I really recommend checking that book out.
That might have been, like, the YouTube channel might have been referencing that particular video. Like, she may have been interviewed in that or something, but that title, The Dragon Behind the Glass, sounds super familiar.
Yeah, no, it's a really good read for you fish geeks out there like myself.
Well, if I can remember, I'll take the note right now because I absolutely love my books. I'm a huge book nerd. I'm going to write down Dragon Behind the Glass, and I'll make sure that I find a link to that book and give that book some love. And I know for sure on my own I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
All right, so Dragon Behind the Glass. Randy's writing that down right now. That makes for a wonderful audio interview. So, Zach, like in these competitions, anything cool in terms of, like, man, I didn't know they're doing that with guppies, or, man, I've never seen a discus like that?
Well, they definitely had some, surprisingly goldfish that I was really impressed by. Some of the pearl scales with the bubbly heads, just pretty cool breeds of goldfish you don't see in the U.S. And I think it's pretty uncommon for us to see high-end goldfish in stores in general in retail locations. There's some places in LA here where we'll see $100 goldfish once in a while, but they're generally the $1.99 fantails throughout most of the country, I would say. So that was actually really cool. A lot of the high-end bettas were really nice. I really enjoyed that competition. And we'll talk about this later, but it's part of the reason that we're bringing a betta competition to Aquatic Experience this year. Just the high-end bettas, and you see the wild-caught bettas, and just really impressive, both the coloration, and then they're also judged on their personalities. So they're not supposed to be hiding in the back. They're supposed to be coming up to the front and kind of displaying a little bit. So that whole idea is pretty neat.
Wow, I never would have thought that personality would have been, I mean, it makes sense as you say it, but I never would have thought that would have been one of the characteristics. Like, you think of size, color, finnage, like those characteristics, but yeah, personality, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's actually something that a lot of fish competitions will judge on the personality, and that's something I've been surprised by a lot of the European discus for this. Because these discus competitions, the fish are not supposed to be hiding in a corner, and they're supposed to be around thousands of people but still colored up. And I think most of us, when we go to a fish store and we see discus that are just all black and stressed out and not what they're supposed to look like. So the discus are, especially if you go to Germany and see some of those beautiful German discus, they have a great personality, come up to you instead of hiding in the corners.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you think some of that has to do with, are the Germans not keeping them in heavily planted tanks or, heavily decorated tanks, so that, the more bare the tank is, the more exposed the discus is, and then therefore it will become comfortable?
Well, I think a lot of people who breed discus breed them in bare bottom tanks. Right, even especially the Asian crowds as well, because a lot of breeders come from Singapore for Asian discus, and then the Germans, have a slightly different body shape to the discus. They breed them in bare bottom tanks, and then a lot of times they'll hand feed them, or they'll feed them in a way that they're just used to being around people. But I think the biggest thing with having them create those personalities, especially when they're small, is to get them used to being around people and not in tanks that are full of thousands of other fish.
Yeah, so that hand feeding element, that right there, you're able to imprint upon them at a very young age. Here comes this, this human. We're all used to like an Oscar cichlid or other fish like puffers that get used to their owners. But you don't really see that too much with discus. But hearing that if the Germans are actually hand feeding them from a very young age, that all starts to make a lot of sense then.
Yeah, especially if you're doing them in smaller amounts. And I mean, I think it's worth noting too that you mentioned having heavily planted tanks. I think most serious discus keepers don't use many plants in their tanks. They either leave them bare bottom, or they create a South American biotope with driftwood and rocks, but not necessarily heavily planted.
Yeah, so not a lot of places for the discus to hide.
Yeah, hide, and then sometimes if you have a heavily planted tanks, the debris will actually fall into the plants and then foul up the water a little bit faster, and just because people try to keep their water more pristine than some other fish.
Yeah. And then as far as like anything in the hardware, the technology, the filter, the lighting space that you've seen that's really innovative that maybe hasn't made its way over to the USA?
So I think there's some things that are coming over now and they're on their way over, and there's some things that have been in the saltwater side for a long time, or at least 10, 15 years, that are just beginning to become popular on the freshwater side. Specifically, I'm talking about controllers. So we've been using Neptune or some other type of controller in our saltwater tanks for a long time. But I'm seeing, a handful of freshwater specific controllers come to the market, and that's really exciting. For anyone who travels or just wants a low maintenance tank, controllers can allow you to turn things on and off or notify you if there's issues, or, at this point even do automatic water changes from, throughout the day while you're at work. So that's made a huge impact to my personal hobby, just from the fact that I can travel around the world and not have to worry about my fish tank.
And for the purely freshwater enthusiasts out there that have no experience with controllers, and I myself, I only vaguely know of these just because I'm now in the industry and kind of looking around at different products. It's essentially kind of a smart power strip, right, at its base, where you plug in various components into this smart power strip, and then from there you're then able to program on-offs and various other functions from that.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say the biggest one in the U.S. is still going to be the Neptune systems controllers, the Apex system, because it is so versatile and they've got a lot of little modules that add on to it. But you can monitor your full water quality, where it's the pH and the salinity, even temperature, all that kind of stuff can be monitored through the app from anywhere in the world on your phone or a tablet, and then you can turn things on and off, or have them timed to turn on and off. So specifically your lighting, or you could have a UV sterilizer turn on for 8 hours a day, and then adjust that as needed as well. Pretty much anything that you could plug into a plug and you want to control in one way or another, you can do with a controller. And then, in addition, you can also do some stuff, cool stuff with, Alexa apps or different type of home, Wi-Fi automated controllers that, say turn on lights, turn off lights. So there's some cool stuff you can do with those if you want to play around with it too, if you're a gear junkie.
So how much would that differentiate from the basic controls? Because I'm going to be a very, very late adopter on the actual home assistant. I don't want Skynet in my house just yet. So like kind of play me through it, right? Like the controller idea, I understand that. Wi-Fi controls, you can use it, operate things remotely, turn things on and off, change settings. So how does plugging Alexa into this, like what's like something really cool where you're like, oh yeah, Randy, you say Skynet, but here's this really cool thing that it can do beyond just the normal controller function?
So theoretically, I mean, there's so many different things you could do. So theoretically, say you have a freshwater tank, right? And say you put a automated top-off on there that comes from an RO system or something. You could theoretically have your control your Amazon Echo or whatever, Google Home or whatever you're using, to turn a pump on to drain the tank a certain amount, right? And then your auto top off will fill it up. So theoretically, you could do automatic water changes from anywhere in the world just by using that.
Okay, and so that's where the Alexa component would come in. So that's not an actual feature that the controller is able to do.
So the controller does it easily on its own, but if you wanted to do it another way, there's other ways to do it.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of it's kind of like wallifying it, right, or making it more of a clap-on thing.
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
Gotcha.
If you get the Neptune Apex, they actually have a system called the DOSE, and they have one of those that has an automated water change feature on it. So that will actually uses a kind of a dosing pump, hence the name dose. Very technologically advanced.
Yeah, there you go, spelling it out, man.
Yeah, right. And what that does is it'll actually take one side of it will remove water, and the other side will put water back in. So if it will even take water from a saltwater reservoir, so you can do water changes, automatic water changes on saltwater tanks. But you can also use it for fresh water, and that's what I was using it for most recently. Just remove the water and have it automatically filled back in from the RO system.
Nice, yeah, and this episode is not sponsored by Neptune. They're getting a ton of free plugs.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what I was saying, someone else.
Zack gets $1 every time he says the word Neptune in this podcast.
I wish, yeah.
On the note of on the pH controller or the pH probe, how often does that have to be calibrated?
More often than I do.
Okay.
That's a safe bet. I would say, do every 3 months and you're probably fine. 6 months at the absolute minimum. Any longer than that, and it can go off a little bit. But it really depends what you're using the pH probe for. If you're using the pH probe just to monitor what your tank pH is, then you could probably go a long time and not have to do anything. If your pH probe is attached to a controller that is adding CO2 into the system, then in that situation you want to keep it a little bit more accurate and precise.
Oh wow! So for the planted tanks, now is this for planted tanks as well, or again saltwater noob? You guys aren't injecting.
I would recommend that for any planted tank. I tell you, anytime I run CO2 into my tanks, that I will use a pH controller.
Wow.
And I generally keep my pH 6.5 to 7, depending on the type of fish that are in there. With the idea that once you have the pH controller in there, you can't overgas everything in your tank with CO2, and you get an ideal amount of CO2 without killing everything.
Oh, that's cool. I feel like you don't see many people at all, at least what I've seen, actually running CO2 through a controller that's then being triggered by pH, like real-time pH from a monitor. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's something that it costs a little bit of money, and a lot of freshwater people are not willing to spend the extra money in the U.S. at least. Throughout the world, especially in Europe, they love spending money. But saltwater people in the U.S. have no problem spending a couple $100s on something, but freshwater people are not as are maybe possibly more frugal.
So is that the swag? A couple $100 to get something like this set up, to not including the cost of the the CO2 components themselves, like the regulator, the tank, the diffuser, but the actual controller mechanism and the pH probe is a couple $100.
Yeah, the very basic like Milwaukee controller is probably about $200.
What about the one that you have, though? Because I feel like you don't have the basic.
Well, that's actually one I'm looking $130 to $200. The Milwaukee is probably the most common freshwater one that people will use, and you can either set it to adjust the pH down, or you can set it to adjust pH up, which would be a saltwater use.
Gotcha. And now, so your world travels this past year, since you've been on the podcast, has anything that you've seen or experienced influenced your own personal fish keeping at home?
I would say not the actual hard goods so much as the way that people set tanks in other countries.
Expand that out for me.
Yeah. So a lot of times when we go to trade shows here, and I do a lot of trade shows in the U.S., so I see how we set tanks up here, and we set them up, just on the spot, and we try to make it look good with whatever plants we can make it look good with, right now. If you go to Interzoo in Germany, they travel around to these trade shows, and they have these tanks set up for 6 months. So when they go to the trade show, their tanks look so much nicer than ours. So I think they have a little bit more respect for making something look amazing. And then Aquarama was the same thing, where they had a lot of just amazing displays, whether they're paludariums or just aquatic planted displays where they put a lot more time and effort into making the tanks look good prior to the show, where we end up doing it like on site. So it's really interesting how they do that. And then just throughout the world, I think there's a lot more respect for full planted tanks than what we have in the U.S. And I think it's growing here, and it's been growing for the past 15 to 20 years, and will eventually get there. But I was in Spain at the Barcelona Aquarium in November, and I was blown away that they had this planted tank that was originally planted by Takashi Amano, and it was 20 foot across, bowed. So you see almost different regions where the plants are different, and it kind of goes from one region to the next. And the whole way across is just, put 10 large tanks into one, and it all combined into something that was really amazing. And then they had a smaller area where they had different types of planted tank setups. So it's saying this one is decorated Dutch style, this one's decorated nature aquarium style, and they've all set up in a different way, and that was all set up by Amano at one point in the past. So they just put a little bit more respect into those natural planted environments, and I think we spend a lot of time here on the saltwater tanks when you go to the aquarium, and we overlook some of the beauty that you can find in the freshwater side.
You mean when you say aquarium, in the public space, right? Like a public aquarium?
Yeah.
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 I mean, it sounds like though that was it the Boston Aquarium? They have a pretty good Amazon display, like where Sam Rutka he's volunteered at.
Yeah, the New England there. I have actually not been there, but I assume it's pretty nice. But if you go to Shed Aquarium in Chicago, I love that aquarium. Their planting is basically the kind of planted tanks we would do in maybe the 90s. There's not a whole lot of thought put into it. It's just a bunch of big plants that grow really tall, and they look really good, but they're not necessarily as aquascaped. So I'm sure that Sam does a great job where he's at. I've not personally seen his, unfortunately.
I want to say that what they have at the New England Aquarium is more of a South American biotope, is I think what they've gone with is at least one of their displays. Yeah,
they do a lot of support for Project Piaba up there, and Piaba pushes a lot of the biotopes, the Rio Negro biotopes. So that would be my assumption.
Sure. Well, Scott Dowd being there that's pretty heavy influence. So
that's why I can sort of make that assumption.
Yeah. So it sounds like if the Shed Aquarium, if they need to update their planted tank, maybe like past guest John Piney and the Aquascapers Collective and all of that Chicago Aquatic Plant Society, maybe they can talk their way into Shed and let them, totally redo this public display in kind of a more current, modern aquascaping style.
I think that I don't know if that specific group is working with them, and they, I'm not saying anything bad about Shed. I love that aquarium. I'm not talking bad about that. I was actually surprised last time I was there in March that they had changed out several of their tanks.
Oh, nice.
So not the planted ones necessarily, but they had a new rainbow display from what I saw last year. So they are in the process of switching some things out. So I'm sure that they do that as they can, and it would be nice to see them refresh possibly some of their planted tank setups. But I'm not saying anything about the aquarium. I love the Shed Aquarium. So, good for them.
I picture this is now going to kick off like in The Simpsons when Homer told Bart he couldn't go watch the movie because he wanted him to be a Supreme Court justice. And at the movie theater, they had a picture of Bart and they wouldn't sell him a ticket. I think now maybe the Shed's going to have your photo up and they're not going to let you in anymore after this.
No.
No, and I have yet to go. I've been to Chicago. I've done some work in Chicago, but I've not actually been to the Shed Aquarium. And that definitely, from everything that people talk about it sounds like it is an awesome experience in and of itself. So I definitely need to go check that out one of these days too.
Yeah, Shed I recommend. Atlanta I recommend. Then Northern California, Monterey Bay is pretty amazing too. But I mean, Seattle's nice. You can't say anything bad about Seattle.
The problem with the Seattle Aquarium is that they're doing so much road construction down there, and the parking. It's basically, what was it, like $30 to park, just to go to the aquarium, and then the fee to get into the aquarium is, I don't know, $20 or something in that ballpark. So it is a pretty expensive endeavor to go down to that aquarium, and it's not it's not the largest out there by any means. And once you're down there, I mean, traffic can be real tough, but nonetheless, I mean, I don't want to poo-poo it too much. I mean, it's an aquarium, it's an awesome experience, but just Seattle, the city in and of itself has this like anti-car, kind of nature. They don't want people driving in; they want you taking public transportation, and if you live on the outlying areas, that makes things kind of tough to go visit. So.
Well, you got to pay your parking fees because you don't have to pay the state income tax fees, right?
Hey,
that's what I said when I lived there. It's like, it's $30 park anytime I'm here.
Oh man, we're gonna digress hard on this one. So the trick is you go and you park at the downtown Target if you want to walk really far, and as long as you spend $20 at Target, I think you get your free your first couple hours for free. But that's kind of a parking hack. But we could talk about property taxes and how much more property taxes are here, but then we're completely getting off topic.
So I feel like everybody that is going to listen to this is now going to be parking at Target, and Target's going to change their policy just because of you.
That would be, well, I mean, if most of the listenership is outside of like a major metro area, it's not even going to be an issue because everywhere else in the country that isn't like an urban center has parking as far as the eye can see.
Yeah. For sure.
And that's actually one of the things I miss about living in California. Like, they prop up these shopping centers, and they're just like the parking lots are enormous. And here in Seattle, because of the terrain, the sound, how much is already developed, they basically don't build new shopping centers. They just kind of repurpose old shopping centers. And from a parking standpoint, they don't expand the parking lots. And so you put this brand new, like, nice shopping center. The buildings are larger. They eat up some of the original parking spaces, and then you're left with just a kind of a parking nightmare. But
I mean, California may have the big structures, but they're all still full. So I mean, it doesn't make that much of a difference.
Well, I guess I grew up in Northern California, so you Southern California guys. Although San Diego wasn't too bad, but yeah, you're in more like LA area.
Yeah.
I will. I pray for you. I pray for anybody every night living in LA. That is that's an experience in and of itself.
We could use it.
All right.
Anyway, back to fish.
Back to tropical fish. Yeah. Hopefully, there's still some listeners tuning into us. So let's talk about aquatic experience. So I would say, we had you on for that episode 18 or episode 16 to talk about 2018 aquatic experience. I had never been to one. I'd only ever seen, a couple of videos of people's past experiences there. I was convinced I wanted to go. I needed to go and check this thing out. So I did. The first year in Secaucus, New Jersey, I went all 3 days and I had an absolute blast. I don't think there was ever a moment when I was like, man, what can I do next? Because I spent so much time at each of the booths talking to the various vendors and reps and all the people in the, kind of the social media fish side of things and just socializing. But then also some really great educational talks. I think I went to, 3 or 4 different talks, and that was a fantastic experience. I feel like we're going to beat the word experience to death in this podcast. But no, I mean, I had a fantastic time, and so knowing that I wanted to bring you on again to hype up the 2019 aquatic experience and just talk about maybe what some of the things that you're changing, some of the feedback you've received of the 2018 event, and moving forward, given that we're only about 3 months away, it's October 12 and 13.
That's correct.
So October 12th and 13th, 2019 in Secaucus, New Jersey. So it's July 9th right now. So people have got, a couple months to book their travel and get their hotel room. But now would be the time. So Zach, I'll give it to you to talk about it.
It sounds like you sold it for me. I don't need to say anything. I mean, that was perfect.
Hey, we've got some time to fill. You have to talk.
Oh, man. No, thanks. I hope you had a great time, and I hope that everyone who was there had a great time. I'm just coming back from Reefapalooza, which was actually in the same location, and everyone I spoke to that came to the show really loved it. So, that's one of the best things we can hear as a show promoter, in show management, is to hear that the attendees had a really good time in the show. So that's number one. We're doing a show for the industry and for the people. So we love to hear that. We do have some new things happening in the show this year, and we're very excited about it. I already alluded to our new betta competition that's going to be put on by the Betta Breeders United. So it will be a international IBC, International Betta Congress sanctioned competition, and they expect to have roughly 500 different bettas involved in that. So that should be a really, really cool new feature in the show. We're still going to continue the aquascaping competition, which has been very popular since the first day we had it. So that's run by the AGA group. We still have our cichlid competition that's ACA sanctioned. And then we still have the international shrimp competition that is kind of run by JBJ and Dennerly and Chris Lukop and Shrimp King. So those competitions are really a driving force of the show, and we're excited for all of them. We're also continuing to have lots and lots of aquarium setups that we as show management actually set up throughout the couple of days before the show. So that includes our fish from around the world. So we lots of little tanks that are broken up from different areas of the world and different fish that would be found together. So South America, Asia, Africa, whatnot. Different aquarium displays for the Florida Tropical Fish Farmers, which it helps promote their group of fish farmers in Florida. And then the biggest thing I want to really get people interested in is the kids aquarium competition. So that was a little bit small last year, but we've had over 80 people in the past be involved with that competition. So that's an area where kids basically put in a small amount of money. They come, they decorate tanks, and it could be My Little Pony or G.I. Joe or whatever, Masters of the Universe or whatever, Legos inside of them. And then the tanks are on display during the show, and then the kids get to take the whole tank home at the end of the event. So they basically get a $60 system for, $10, $15. So that's something that we really want to try to promote aquarium keeping to a young audience, and getting kids involved is really cool.
What's your medium for getting that message out there to try to drum up as much? I would assume there's going to be pre-registration for that, or is it just register on the day of the event?
Yeah, so the kids is all pre-registration. So my medium is talking to you and telling everybody in the area, if you have a kid, register them for this contest. No, so we actually send out a lot of emails to schools, and we work closely with the Pets in the Classroom group, which provides grants to teachers that want to have pets in their classrooms. So we work with that group, and we get a list of schools to kind of send that information out. And then it's on our website, and we also have social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that kind of promotes that contest as well. And pretty much everything else we do is promoted in our social media programs.
Is there like a flyers on the ground kind of campaign in local fish stores to try to get people in, or leveraging the larger big box stores in that kind of tri-statey East Coast area?
Yeah, we should actually have flyers being sent out and distributed through those local retailers middle of August. Generally is when we get those out. And the idea is if it goes too far out, then people will forget about
Sure.
it. So we keep that within 2 months of the show, and then hopefully anyone who's shopping at those stores can kind of go in and learn more about it. But any questions can come to us or through our website, which is aquaticexperience.org. And then again, see us any of our information on social media. Please reach out to us. Once you follow Aquatic Experience on Facebook, it seems like it pops up every time you're looking at something. So it kind of fills my feeds, which is good.
Is the pre-registration for this event, is it open right now?
For the Kids Aquarium contest is open, and the cichlid contest is open. The AGA aquascaping contest is open, The beta and the shrimp are still not quite available, but the rest of it is currently available. We will have tickets for sale on our website within the next month or so. I think our date is August 1st for the tickets to be available, but they're not quite ready right now. Good news is we actually changed up our whole pricing and made some things a little bit easier for people to attend this show. So we just changed from a 3-day show. We used to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This year we're going to just be Saturday and Sunday, based off of things we've learned in this new location that people can't get off work on Friday. So I think that's actually a wise move on our part, and I think it's going to be really good. But when we made this change, we actually adjusted the ticket pricing a little bit. So a 1-day pass will now be $18, but the full weekend pass is only $30. So that's significantly less than a weekend pass was in the past.
Nice.
The other thing is either the 1-day or the weekend pass will get you free education this year. So we used to charge, I think it was $40 per day for education on top of your ticket price. So free education this year for that just standard entry. So that's actually really exciting.
And when you say education, what does that cover?
So we have different courses that are based off of either retailer or consumer. But the consumer education, we generally have 4 to 6 people speaking throughout each day, and they'll talk about planted tanks or biotopes or shrimp, freshwater shrimp, or marine, or basic aquarium keeping skills and bacteria. So we have basic discussions like that, and if you have any interest in set up a biotope tank, you can kind of go in and listen to that. And just gives you ideas to make your hobby better and to grow your interest in the hobby. So that's all really cool information. And ideally we'd have give you a chance to see some speakers that you may have only seen in YouTube videos or people you've not met in the past. So we're excited to get people like that involved and make people excited to sit in a room for 45 minutes listening to someone talk about fish.
Yeah, 2 of the speakers from last year that, I would assume that you're going to do your due diligence again and you're going to have some top quality speakers, but Chris Lukamp and Dr. Ashley Emanuel were both speakers last year that I sat in on their presentations, and they were phenomenal. I truly enjoyed it. So I can't say enough good things about, balancing out your weekend if you're going for both days or even 1 day. Between the booze and planning it out so that if there's a certain talk that you want to go to, you can, and it gives you a nice change of pace. You can sit down, listen to somebody talk, and hear some great anecdotes and experiences for 45 minutes to an hour, whatever the duration is, and then you go back out on the floor and you check out the aquascaping competition or any of these other competitions, because there's a lot. Like, you guys pack a lot of stuff into that building.
Yeah, no, we do our best to fill the room. When we do some other shows in the same location, and they only use about half of the room. We fill up the whole room with one thing or another. And like you said, I think earlier in the conversation, you went and had a chance to go hang out with the YouTube crowd last year. Well, we're doubling the size of the fish tuber booth this year. So they've got a 20-foot by 20-foot booth right in the center of the show floor. So we're hoping that area just blows up and getting a lot of social media people in there. So it's a great place to come and meet people like yourself, hopefully, and for everyone just to come and meet whoever they like from social media, whether it's Rob from Flip Aquatics, or it's Corey from Aquarium Co-op, or it's Mr. Randy Reed from Aquarius Podcast. He's the one that people really want to see.
Said no one ever.
So, no, I think that's really a great, fun area to see. And I think we're always amazed how many people come to the show, and they wait in lines just to say hi to some of the YouTube personalities, the social media personalities, because I think a lot of those people are really driving the growth of the industry right now. They're bringing new people in, and that's really exciting to see the new people enter the hobby from the social media groups.
Yeah, I mean, and there's definitely an appreciation for what they're trying to do as far as their content and just investing money, and maybe not all of them are actually making money on their content, but they're investing in video equipment and audio equipment, and they're trying to put out things that are enjoyable for people to watch and talk about their experiences. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on out there, and so I could definitely see how. If you would have asked me 2 years ago before I got into the hobby and really closer to some of these people, I would have been like, "What are you talking about? That's nonsense. That's not a thing." But you immerse yourself in it, and you start to see what they do, and then the fan reactions to it or the viewer reactions. It's good stuff, man. It really is. It's definitely it's different.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was just speaking with a gentleman in New York a couple weeks ago who happened upon the fish tube booth at Aquatic Experience last year, and he was saying how he was talking to someone in the booth, and he looked over and he's like, the one guy I really want to meet is Corey from Aquarium Co-op, and then he looked over, he saw Corey, and he kind of like freaked out. He like did a whole like fanboy, like was embarrassed and couldn't even walk up to him, but later in the weekend went and talked to him. I'm like, that's actually awesome. That's really amazing. Like that's the kind of stuff we like to see in the show. We like to see people who are really excited, who just kind of step out and get to meet maybe some of the heroes or just people that they want to talk to and say, hey, what you do resonates with me.
Yeah, and I think the other cool thing about the show is that it gives the consumer the opportunity to interact with the manufacturers on a different, just to interact with them in general. So a lot of these brand reps and sales reps, when they attend shows and they set these booths up, it's sell. They're trying to open up new accounts or whatever it may be, right? It's a completely different frame of mind. And seeing these guys, they're still in their same Hikari or Sarah or whatever brand gear, but it's just a different atmosphere, and they're able to interact with people like the consumer that actually use their product. They're like, oh yeah, your VibraBites, I love your VibraBites, or I love your O-Nips, or whatever the product is that they happen to sell as a manufacturer. And so that's another really cool facet of this event.
Yeah, no, it's always great to see, be able to interact with them and say, hey, your product's great, or why do you do this, which they love. But it's also really neat to go in and say, like, but what's new? What's next? We love what you're doing. What else do you have? And it's really cool to see, something I saw recently that that blew me away is a way that one lighting company created a rack to hang something from your wall instead of from your ceiling. Just something really basic, but just tweaking things we already have. It's like, hey, why didn't someone think about that sooner? That's really convenient for someone like me that lives in apartments, so I don't have to hang stuff from my ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just new tanks coming out, different shapes. Some of them, have new fish. The Florida fish farmers always bring some of their top quality fish to the show, so it's really cool seeing, fish that they want to show off. And like you say, just create a rapport with your local reps. When I used to be a rep back in the day, it was always fun going to stores, and you'd actually have certain days where certain hobbyists would be following you around to different stores, and they would say, "Hey, didn't I just see you here?" And I don't think every place in the country gets that kind of experience. So it's nice to create that personality with the just average hobbyists.
Nice. So to take a step back and go back to the competitions, and in particular starting with the betta competition. So you guys are expecting 500 bettas to be entered, right?
Yeah, they actually recently had one of their shows in Chicago in May and had about 500 fish. So that's their guess is somewhere around that range. And people actually send their fish from around the world. So it's not just just northeastern USA. It's these fish are sent from around the world to be entered into this contest. What's actually unique about this competition is that they're going to be doing the judging on Friday night before the show opens, and then a lot of those fish will actually be available for sale on Saturday and Sunday of the show. So you could theoretically come and buy a beautiful $75 betta from Singapore or something when you come to the show.
That's awesome. Yeah, so all that, because we see that on Aquabid, right? You go on the Aquabid, you see these bettas, they're beautiful, but then you have to go through the whole transshipper process. And I think the moment somebody sees like, oh, I have to go through transshipper, like nothing against transshippers, but I think that just adds a layer of complexity that nobody really wants to go down that path. I mean, not nobody, but the average person wouldn't want to go down the transshipper route, where if you're just already there and you're seeing these amazing bettas with color combinations and finnage and size that you've never seen before, and personality apparently, and the chance to actually just buy it there. I mean, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, no, we're actually. I'm very excited for this because it's something that we've been talking about for a while and hasn't been able to happen until this year. So we want to make sure it happens, and we want to see it be successful. And what's really cool is that we're going to continue to have our win a betta toss in the front part of the show. That it's kind of ran by Hikari. They're the ones who really run that. And they donate all proceeds to, again, Pets in the Classroom. But you can go win a $3 or $4 betta over there with a little game, and then you can bring that $4 fish over to see the ones that are sometimes worth $1,000, and be like, oh, this is the difference.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, very nice. And as far as if somebody wanted to enter that, like what are the kind of the rules if somebody wanted to enter a betta?
So that's actually we're going to have a link on our website, but generally, just to enter it, it's going to be a fairly small fee, and then they have to make sure the fish gets to the show at a certain time, and they're actually able to send their fish to the group. So all that information will be posted on the rules in the next probably 1 to 2 weeks on our website. So I'd say keep an eye out for that. As I said, it is a IBC sanctioned event. So and it's run by the Betta Breeders United group. So the rules are really their rules. We're just giving them a venue to make it happen.
Oh, gotcha. And then as far as like 500 bettas, I'm trying to wrap my mind around how many tables, how much of a footprint that's going to take up. So, I mean, is that going to be in an area the size of what the shrimp competition was last year? Because there was kind of an offshoot betta competition, right?
Yeah, last year it was really just a display, and Chris Lukop was really trying to get a good betta display together last year, and it was a valiant effort. But that was not a competition. So this will be a 20-foot by 20-foot area, unless it changes. And they've got a racking system, so they've got 4 or 5 fish per in height, and another like 6 or 8 per rack. So it's not going to be that large of an area, so it will be smaller footprint than the shrimp. But yeah, it's just stacked in such a way that they can fit a lot together.
And just for the disclaimer, you had said bettas per, and that's not per a tank. That's just per a rack in individual tanks. Yeah. Just for the betta police out there that might have perked their ears up.
Try to put at least 25 fish in each little tank. And no, that would be terrible. That's the wrong thing to do. No, I believe they're kept in what we call a critter keeper. But whatever they have, it's all temperature modulated, and the way they actually judge them is interesting. They have to have something solid in between each fish, so that they don't see each other all the time. Because if they see each other, then they stay flared the entire time and a little bit stressed.
Yeah.
But when they judge, they have to be able to remove that so that they can see each other. Because when you're judging, you want them to flare up. So, they insert a piece of paper or something in between each little tank, to ensure that the health of each fish. So that's all stuff that's in the IBC rules that needs to be followed.
Wow, so I wonder if there's then some gamesmanship as far as like, oh man, I don't want my betta to be next to this guy because it's this color, and maybe that throws the judges off when they go to judge my betta and they pull that card, right, and they start flaring. I wonder if there's any psychology behind that.
I don't think that people work too much for a show like this. Like, I don't think that the people do that much effort to be in certain areas, with the idea that a majority of the fish are sent in, and the people who are submitting the fish are not actually coming to the show, especially if they're coming from outside the country. So generally, the people running the competition will place all fish in each category, and there's, I think, 50 categories for the bettas.
Oh, gotcha.
So yeah, all the fish in this category over here, and then so on. So yeah, I don't think that plays as big of a part.
Yeah, so it's not like what do they call them, like a black mamba next to like the new Thai flag color, and for some reason like the red, white, and blue distracts you when you're trying to judge the black and silver fish. So interesting.
Yeah.
I just assume people are going to have gamesmanship intentions and try to work the system.
That kind of stuff's happened at some of these types of shows in the past. We've been lucky that most of our participants in our contests have always been just really good sports, and have accepted judging as it is. And I think people realize that we're really here to promote the industry. We're not here to make anyone feel good or bad. The one that gets probably the most competitive we get at the show is in the aquascaping competition. The cichlid people are all friendly. The shrimp people, again, the shrimp competition, a lot of them send their livestock to the show and may not be attending the show. But the aquascapers are the ones who put their hours and hours of work in at the show. So they're a little bit more competitive in that competition.
Well, definitely. So Jeff Miyake, who I had on the show, when he won 2018, and I asked him, when did you start planning for this? He's like, after we lost in 2017, like that day. And so, that team.
How can we win?
Exactly. So is there going to be a large tank and a small tank division still?
Yeah, so that's what we do each year. The large tank is invitational, so you actually have to submit pictures of past aquascapes to the AGA, and if they accept you, then you can get into that competition. And the small tank is open to everybody, so that's the the one that beginners will get into, but some of the best people in the country are still doing aquascapes in there. So luckily, John Pinney apparently retired after last year, so he won't keep winning from everyone. So the winning place is up for grabs, and we're interested to see who that will be.
Nice. And so, how many? Are there any estimates right now? Like, you guys think you'll have X number of entrants for the large tank and Y number for the small tank?
Yeah, we kind of cap it around 30 for the small tank, and I believe we have it capped at 8 for the large tank. We could theoretically add a couple more to either, but that's 30 and 8 is kind of generally where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Because what was it last year? Was it 6 that were in the large tank? 5 or 6?
Yeah, it might have been 5 or 6, and part of that's because just moving locations.
Mm-hmm.
It was there's people in the Midwest know what aquatic experience is and has been, but people in the Northeast really have to still get an idea of what we are. So 2 years, I think it's going to grow. This year we've seen a lot of these applications, especially for the small tanks, coming in already. It takes 3 to 5 years sometimes for a show to get to its full potential. So this year is going to have more people and more entrants than we had last year, and then it's just going to continue to grow.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm torn on personally. Did I like the small tanks better, the small tank competition, or the large tank competition better? Like, the large tanks are cool because obviously just the size of it, right? The size, the grandeur, like they've got all of this room to work with. These teams are, they're really putting their heads together to come up with amazing designs. But then the small tanks, there's just so many of them, and the overwhelming majority are just, they're all so good. So it's they're almost both super awesome in their own respects.
I like the large tank with the idea that, like you said, it's a team effort, because they usually have 3 to 4 people that are all working on one tank, and that's really impressive to think how people can work together to really get the most ideal setup. I think that's cool. The small tank, it always impresses me when someone can take a small tank and create a sense of depth. And that's a big part of the judging that goes on too. take a small tank. If you can take a picture of it and it looks like it's a huge tank, that's a huge plus in my opinion. So that's impressive when I see some depth and some character to the hardscape, and then also ideally something that could be kept long term without just becoming a mess. If anyone's kept a full planted tank in their past, and they know what it's like after a month where it's just everything grows so fast that it becomes a mess. I try to keep that in mind when I'm looking at these small tanks.
Yeah. No, I mean there's the design element. There's the plant selection. All everything that comprises of your design, but then that execution and actually manipulating these materials and these live plants and planting them and getting everything into position like you want it, and then being able to fill it up with water. I mean, just that execution part is something that is so impressive in and of itself, just separate from designing the thing.
Yeah, I like to look at the way that the tanks are judged based off the AGA standards, and some of the things that they do is does it create depth? Is it set for longevity? If there's livestock, does the livestock create harmony in the system? Are there a variety of different colors of plants and shaped leaf sizes and shapes that work in conjunction with one another, or do they fight with each other? And some of those aspects of judging really helps to help you appreciate what the aquascapers do. We had someone that set up a tank at one of our other shows, America's Family Pet Expo in Orange County, where I run a smaller aquascaping contest where we have 10 to 12 tanks at that one. And someone set up a system where it was sort of like a biotope, but it was planted, and you saw the fish acting in just the most natural way. Like if you were in Rio Negro and you saw the fish acting like that, it would be completely natural. And the tank was set up in a way that made the fish feel natural. And it was just really impressive, in my opinion, just to see these fish acting like that, even though they were put in a tank yesterday, and not acting like all the other fish in all the other tanks we had. So it's really cool to see someone that really gets it. And every once in a while, it happens at these competitions.
No, that's awesome. So, Zach, anything else that you want to let us know about Aquatic Experience? One kind of final sales pitch on this episode of the podcast?
Yeah, I would say if you have any interest in fish, any type of aquariums, if you just like plants, and you're anywhere near New Jersey, you got to come down to this show. It's a lot of fun. You'll meet a lot of really cool people. You can create relationships with just amazing people that could last forever. Take your hobby to the next level. Bring your whole family. We have stuff to do for the whole family. And come have a great show, and come see us in October.
Yeah, totally. And then as far as hotel accommodations, you guys are partnered up with a hotel again, right?
Yeah, our partner hotel is officially the Embassy Suites, which is right next to the venue. And you can call Embassy Suites and say, I'm here for Aquatic Experience, and they will give you our show discounts. And they're actually pretty good this year, a little bit better than they were last year. So be sure you call the hotels. There are a number of hotels in the area, but the Embassy will be our partner.
Yeah, and for me personally, my experience flying out there from Seattle, I flew into Newark. It was basically a shuttle bus. I think I pretty much took a shuttle bus from the airport to that Meadowlands Exposition Center, stayed at that Embassy Suites hotel. There's a ton of food choices, all within walking distance right there. The cool thing about after the show too is a lot of these fish tubers, a lot of the shrimp competition people, a lot of the people participating in the Aquatic Experience, they go to those restaurants, and so they're hanging out, having a good time, and it gives you an opportunity to socialize with them and hang out. And it was just a really good time all around. I mean, the event, the after the event activities, and just a lot of fun. Like when fish people get together, it's just good times.
Yeah, they definitely get together in the hotel afterwards, and I think I was in the Red Robin one day, and I saw 30 of the YouTube guys just hanging out. And yeah, everyone's just very friendly. We all get along, which is amazingly fun. You can't go to too many places where just everybody gets along. And they're not even always talking about fish. They're just talking about life, and people love hanging around each other. So yeah, come out, have a good time, and see what we're all about.
Yeah, for sure. The flights are cheap right now, everybody. Get that hotel booked up. Zach, thank you very much, man, for coming on again. It's been a blast. I'll have to have you back on in, was it like 51 some odd episodes? I don't know. I can't do math right now, but well, it's been great, Zach. Thank you very much for coming on, dude, and talking about the aquatic experience and your fun travels.
Hey, thanks for having me, Randy.